Сила слова.
Why do you think it's important for you to spend time coming here, flying during hours and doing trainings and teaching reporters here in Ukraine?
Well, thanks for having me here. And first, let me make clear my function at the New York Times. I was the head of the computer-assisted reporting team. There were 8 people on the team, and we helped the paper win 8 Pulitzer Prizes. We didn't do it individually. Okay, and as to why I do this, one good reason, I think, is when I was touring Yanukovych's palace. And the tour guide was a freedom fighter, and he was wrapped in a freedom fighter flag. And he said that Ukraine had 2 recent revolts, one the Orange and the other Maidan. And he said not much changed after that, and that their best hope was a free and independent press. So I can't think of anything better to do than to help toward that end in some small way. Well, my mother's parents were born and raised in Mukachevo. Actually, my grandfather was born out another city. I'm not sure which one it was, but he lived in Mukachevo when he met my grandmother. And it was Austria-Hungary when they left in 1907.
And now let's come back to the training in Mykolaiv. So, did you share your personal professional experience of investigative reporting with the participants and how they received this, your experience? What was the reaction?
I talked to them for about 4 hours. I showed them some techniques to use for investigative reporting, and they seemed receptive. And the techniques I do, it can be complicated. And when people see the amount of work that you need to do a good investigative reporting, they could see it as a daunting task.
There is a widespread opinion in Ukraine that investigative reporting always is biased and paid by someone to fight some opponent. And this opinion thinks that there is no objectivity in the investigative reporting. What is your personal opinion on this?
Well, rather than opinion, I have a personal observation, and the journalists I've seen in Ukraine, especially here, that's not true at all of them. They're there for reporting, and judging from Oleg's clothes, I don't think anybody's paying him to do stories. Yeah, I think the stories are just done because of the news value, and I think they're done objectively.
Did you learn something new about Ukrainian reporters when you have been communicating with the participants of the training?
This is my 5th time to Ukraine in 2 years, and I learned something each time I come. And the thing that strikes me most is the intense spirit of striving to be good reporters and to produce good journalism and as a side effect, but not part of being biased, is to foster freedom. Well, the ones I know from the Center for Investigative Reporting here are top-rate journalists. The work I've seen is amazing, and if people will have me back, they have.
How the situation on the east of Ukraine is covered and discussed in the States, in your country?
You barely hear about it, and I was asked in Kyiv by journalists there why we're not covering it, and I said, well, you should be in communication with the larger papers in the States and say that you have this situation going on that is hardly being covered, and I think it should be covered more in depth than it is now.
So the question about your professional experience and personality, why did you interested in investigative reporting and married this profession?
Why am I interested in investigative reporting? When I see something wrong, I want to let people know that this wrong is happening.
So there are few reporters who are doing investigative reporting in Mykolaiv, and there is another issue, that the lack of the professional solidarity. What do you think about the importance of the professional solidarity of reporters, and that might enable the opportunity to do the professional investigative reporting and journalism itself?
Well, I think I think if the reporters, by lack of, I think you might be referring to competition, and I think competition is good for reporting. When I was reporting, I always wanted to beat the competition, and I think it fosters better journalism. I don't know about solidarity now. Okay. You know, I was at Yanukovych's palace with Oleg, and he told me about how journalists throughout Ukraine joined together to cover the papers recovered from the reservoir. And I think that's an incredible case of solidarity. And one thing that struck me about it was that members of the community came to help, and members of the community came to make sure that they weren't interfered with in recovering these papers. And in contrast, I went from there back to my hotel and watched the Trump campaign, where reporters were roped off in a caged area, and people in the audience were chanting, lock them up, you know, and it seemed that reporters were better received here than in the U.S., you know.
Sometimes training can change the future of the participant and can change the life, because the information that they get at the trainings might actually change their attitude toward the profession and a lot of other change to the mindset. Did you have in your experience someone who would you call the teacher or the trainer who actually changed your life or made a lot of in your understanding of what you are doing and why?
Ironically, the person who changed my life the most was a professor I had when I was a psychology major. And he stressed a rigid adherence to the scientific method. And people don't usually associate the scientific method with journalism, but I do. And it ensures that you're going to be objective and that any results you have can be replicated. And I also did a lot of statistics with him. And knowing statistics and the scientific method, it sort of put me on the path where I went into computer-assisted reporting.
Just your wishes to the people who are listening to us, to Mykolaiv radio.
I'm glad you're listening. I'm a big fan of public radio myself, and reporting news is expensive. And I would encourage the listeners to in some way help support journalism.
Сила слова.